lights buzzed softly as Mark began his nightly routine at Evergreen Valley Hospital. At 32, he'd been working the graveyard shift in the morgue for 3 years, but he never quite got used to the eerie silence that permeated the basement level. 10 p.m. Mark's shift had just begun. He methodically checked the cold storage units, ensuring each was at the correct temperature. The monotonous task helped calm his nerves. As he approached the last unit, a chill ran down his spine. The temperature gauge read 10 degrees warmer than it should. Mark frowned, opening the door to investigate. Empty. His brow furrowed. According to the log, there should have been a body here, a Jane Doe brought in earlier that day. Mark's heart began to race. Had someone moved the body without updating the records? A soft thud echoed from the hallway outside. Mark froze, straining to listen. Footsteps. Impossible. He was the only one scheduled for this shift. "Hello," he called out, voice wavering. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered him. Mark cautiously made his way to the door, peering out into the dimly lit corridor. Nothing seemed amiss, but the air felt different. Heavier somehow, as if charged with static electricity. As he turned back to the morgue, movement caught his eye. A wisp of something, smoke, mist, curled around the corner at the far end of the hallway. Mark's rational mind screamed at him to call security, to lock himself in the morgue until help arrived. But a morbid curiosity tugged at him, urging him to investigate. He crept down the hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering ominously overhead. As he rounded the corner, he gasped. A figure stood at the end of the corridor, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her back to Mark. Long, matted hair hung down her pale back. "Ma'am," Mark called out, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you lost? You shouldn't be down here." The woman didn't respond. Didn't move. Mark took a tentative step forward. "Ma'am, please. Let me help you back to your room." Slowly, impossibly slowly, the woman began to turn. Mark's blood ran cold as he caught sight of her face. Sunken cheeks. Bluish skin. Eyes clouded over with death. It was the Jane Doe from the missing body. Mark stumbled backward, a scream caught in his throat. The woman, the corpse, tilted her head, regarding him with those lifeless eyes. Then, in a voice like dry leaves scraping against pavement, she spoke. "Why did you wake us?" Us? As if on cue, doors began to open along the hallway. From cold storage units, from supply closets, from rooms Mark didn't even know existed, figures emerged. Men, women, children, all with the same deathly pallor, the same unseeing eyes. Mark turned to run, only to find his path blocked by more of the walking dead. They shuffled towards him, hands outstretched, faces twisted in agonized expressions. He pressed himself against the wall, heart threatening to burst from his chest. This couldn't be real. It had to be a nightmare. The Jane Doe approached, her movements jerky and unnatural. She reached out, her ice-cold fingers brushing Mark's cheek. "Join us," she rasped. Mark squeezed his eyes shut, praying to wake up. When he opened them, the hallway was empty. He let out a shaky breath, knees weak with relief. Just his imagination. Too many late nights, too much caffeine. As Mark made his way back to the morgue, he didn't notice the misty tendrils curling around his ankles. Didn't feel the chill seeping into his bones. He entered the morgue, determined to shake off the terrifying experience and finish his shift. But as the door swung shut behind him, Mark realized his mistake. Every cold storage unit was open. Every slab was empty. And in the center of the room stood the Jane Doe, surrounded by a host of cadaverous figures. She smiled, revealing blackened teeth. "Welcome home," she said. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out. In the darkness, Mark's scream was lost among the whispers of the dead. When the day shift arrived at 6 a.m., they found the morgue in perfect order. Every body accounted for, every record updated. But Mark was nowhere to be found. As weeks passed, rumors spread through the hospital. Night staff reported strange noises from the basement, glimpses of figures that shouldn't be there. And sometimes, in the dead of night, the faint sound of screaming echoed through the halls. Deep in the morgue, in a cold storage unit with no name, a new body waited. And watched. And smiled. Welcome to a story that might make you think twice about your daily routines. What you're about to hear is an account of terror that unfolded in the most ordinary of places. Settle in and prepare yourself for the night shift. Remember, sometimes the most terrifying things are hiding in plain sight. I never thought much about the night security job at Oakwood Mall. It was just a way to pay the bills while I finished my degree. But after what happened last month, I can't look at empty buildings the same way again. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special. I arrived for my shift at 11 p.m., just like always. The mall was empty, all the shops closed up tight. My routine was simple: make rounds every hour, check the security cameras, and make sure nothing was amiss. The first few hours were uneventful. Just the usual creaks and groans of a big building settling for the night. But around 2 a.m., something changed. I was in the security office, watching the monitors, when I noticed a flicker of movement in the food court. I leaned in closer, squinting at the screen. There it was again, a shadow darting between the tables. My first thought was that it must be a rat or maybe a stray cat that had somehow gotten in. But as I watched, the shadow grew larger, more human-like. I grabbed my flashlight and radio, heart pounding as I made my way to the food court. The mall was eerily silent, my footsteps echoing off the tiled floors. As I approached the food court, I heard something that made my blood run cold, the soft sound of breathing just around the corner. I steeled myself and swung around the corner, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. What I saw there, I still have trouble believing it. A figure crouched by one of the tables, hunched over something on the floor. It was vaguely human in shape, but its proportions were all wrong. Limbs too long, body too thin. And its skin, it looked like it was made of shadows, constantly shifting and rippling. The beam of my flashlight passed over it, and it turned to face me. I'll never forget those eyes, pitch black and endlessly deep, like looking into the void itself. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth, and let out a sound that was part hiss, part scream. I ran. I've never run so fast in my life. I could hear it behind me, its footsteps a rapid patter that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I made it back to the security office and slammed the door shut, fumbling with shaking hands to lock it. For hours, I huddled in that office, watching the cameras. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of it, slithering through the shadows, always just out of clear view. When dawn finally came, it vanished as if it had never been there. I quit that job the next day. But I can't shake the feeling that what I saw is still out there, hiding in the dark corners of everyday places. Sometimes, when I'm walking past a closed store or an empty building at night, I think I see movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow that doesn't quite match its surroundings. So the next time you're alone in a seemingly empty place, a parking garage, an office after hours, or yes, even a mall at night, remember this. Just because you can't see something, doesn't mean it's not there. And some things that hide in the darkness are waiting for their chance to step into the light. The flickering streetlight cast long shadows across the empty gas station forecourt. Inside, Jenny wiped down the counter for the 100th time that night. 2:34 a.m. The graveyard shift at Phil's gas end go dragged on. Jenny had taken this job out of desperation. Single mom, 2 kids, rent due. Beggars can't be choosers. But these lonely nights made her skin crawl. A car pulled up to the pump. Finally, a customer. Jenny watched as a man in a baseball cap filled up, then headed towards the store. The bell chimed as he entered. "Evening," he said, voice low. "Pack of Marlboros, please." As Jenny turned to grab the cigarettes, she caught his reflection in the security mirror. He was staring at her, hard. Something in his eyes made her stomach lurch. She handed over the cigarettes, careful to avoid touching his hand. "That'll be $8.50. He didn't move. Just kept staring. "Sir." Jenny's voice wavered. Slowly, he reached into his pocket. Jenny's hand inched towards the panic button under the counter. The man pulled out his wallet, paid, and left without another word. Jenny let out a shaky breath. An hour passed. Jenny jumped at every sound, every shadow. She told herself she was being paranoid. Then she saw it. The same car circling the block. Once, twice, 3 times. Jenny's hands shook as she dialed 911. "There's a suspicious vehicle." She started. The dispatcher cut her off. "Ma'am, is this the gas end go on 5th Street?" "Yes, how did you—" "Lock the doors. Now. Police are on their way." Jenny's blood ran cold as she scrambled to secure the entrance. "What's happening?" "A man fitting the description of a wanted serial killer was spotted in your area. He's known to target..." The line went dead. Outside, the car pulled into the lot. The man in the baseball cap stepped out, something glinting in his hand. Jenny backed away from the door, heart pounding. The man approached, testing the handle. Locked. He smiled. A cold, empty smile that promised violence. Then, sirens. Red and blue lights flooded the parking lot. The man's head snapped around. He bolted for his car. What followed was a blur of policemen, questions, and crime scene tape. Jenny learned later how close she'd come to being the killer's next victim. How her call had likely saved her life. She quit that night. No job was worth that terror. Years later, Jenny still jumps at unexpected noises. Still checks the locks twice before bed. And she never, ever works the night shift.